Okay, Grandma. This is my grandma. This is my mother's mom. And so I'll just start this off. Where and when and where were you born?
I was born in 1937 in Brooklyn, New York. We lived on the third floor of a walk-up building. Um, there were three of us. My older sister's 5 years older than me. My younger sister is 9 years younger than me. And I went to Tilden High School, and I would say the neighborhood was mostly Jewish and kind of middle class, but lower middle class. Not much money, but everybody had the same, so we didn't even notice. It was really just part of everyone was great with it.
So what were your parents like, and what was your relationship like with your parents?
My mother and father got divorced when I was an infant, so I really hardly knew my father. He would visit us, and so, but I hardly really knew him. And then my mother, when I was about 4 years old, she met somebody, and they were together, but he was in the service in World War II. So he was away for like 5 years. They didn't get married till I was maybe, 6, 7 that they got married. Um, and I really loved him. He was really good, but he was a stepfather, and that's when my sister Lynn was born. That's why there's 9 years difference.
Okay. So what was your childhood like overall?
Overall, my childhood was pretty good. I would say it was pretty good. Like I said, we were very contented. Um, I think walking up and down those 3 flights of stairs have helped me over the years because they made my heart pretty strong.
So were there any traumatic experiences that shaped in your early childhood that shaped who you were?
Oh, heavens. Not even so much in my early childhood. I would say maybe in high school, one of my math teachers wanted me to go to college to be an accountant. And I came home and said I would love to go to college. And my mother said, no, that's ridiculous. We don't have the money, and we need you to contribute money. So, and you're going to get married anyway. But that teacher owned a camp in Vermont. And I went to work there that summer to work at his camp. And I think that summer was very traumatic because I realized that there were so many wealthy people and that there were so many people that were not Jewish. And I was like, all of a sudden, oh, there's a whole world out there outside my neighborhood. And I would say the other girls I was working with were all going to go to college. So I really felt that there was quite a difference in the world that grew up in and the world that I was coming to.
So like at this camp, like were there specific events that made you realize you were
Well,
alone?
yeah, I think all the other girls, I think that they came from wealthier families. They had gone to camp when they were young. I think the reason why this teacher really liked me, and he thought maybe he would talk me into going to college, but he didn't realize this just was not a possibility. But over the years, I realized that there was a possibility. I just was not strong enough, and I wasn't. If I had given someone had given me a little push, I maybe would have realized I could work, I could take out loans, I could do things. But I think that was a traumatic time in my life, and I went to work right away outside and contributed into the house.
And did the girls at camp treat you differently, or?
No, they didn't. I got along really very nice with them. In fact, the owner of the camp just chose three of us. We were like 10 of us, and we all, well, he chose me to be a waitress in the dining room where the adults were, and I shared my tips because that's the only really tips that we got, and then I just shared my tips with the others. But supposedly he liked me, and the baker loved me, so I used to go into the baker. He was from Germany. He came all the way from Germany just for the summer to work at this camp in Vermont, and he used to love me, so he'd give me cookies, which I would bring to the parents, and they loved it because I'd give them like cookies to take home, and they just were so thrilled with that. So they always tipped me well.
Okay, so how about we're gonna transfer to talking about your earlier childhood. When could you talk about what happened to your sister?
Oh, my
When
older sister had dislocated hip when she was like 14, 13. They realized that she had trouble walking, and the hospital in New York, Joint Disease, told her that she had a problem with her hips, and they had to put her in the hospital with Joint Disease. She was there for a whole year at the hospital.
so how did this
Well, that
affect
affected
you?
me because I was like maybe 10, and they left me with my baby sister. And I used to go to see my sister like 2, 3 nights a week at least. And I was a coward. I'm still a coward. I'm afraid of my own shadow. So I would lock the door and lock all the windows and say, when are you coming home? When are you coming home? But I actually practically brought up my younger sister. And I think that my younger sister was very jealous when I had children of my own because she really felt that I was like her second mother. And like, where did my children come from? So it's tough. That was kind of hard, but we survived because that was what we learned to do. We learned to survive, and we did. It makes us makes you a stronger person.
So you were 10, and how old was she when you were taking care of her?
So she was like a little bit past a year, and I actually really took care of her outside too. She was born in April, so I would say May, June, July, and August. I actually stayed downstairs with her in the carriage. I changed her diaper. At that time, I was like 9 and a half. And I changed her diaper. I fed her. And we stayed downstairs. I would carry her up and down the 3 flights of steps because my mother at that time was 38. And she felt I was very old to have a baby. In this day and age, a lot of women have babies at 40 and 41. But in those years, 38 was considered ancient to have a baby. So she just felt that she was kind of old. And I did most of taking care of Lynn at that time.
So that must have been extremely hard for you, though.
Well,
at age 9.
Yeah, like I said, we just accepted it. It was just the way it was. There was no choice. This is the way it is. So we just did it and said, okay. I remember going to a fruit store once, and there was a whole line of women. I used to walk to Church Avenue and go to the fruit store. Then those years, you had a fruit store, a dairy store. You had all kinds of stores, not a big market. And I used to say to the fruit man, don't give me anything that's rotten because my mother will make me walk back here again and I'll be very upset. And the women behind me used to laugh and say, let her buy our fruit for us because he really treated me nicely. He didn't want to make me come back again.
Now, what was it like being like the middle child growing up?
Oh, that's interesting because being the middle child, I was always the peacemaker because I didn't want fights. I didn't want arguments. So it was always the peacemaker. But it's interesting because that has helped me like even now. Because after I retired, I went to do mediation for Dispute Resolution Center. And when they interviewed me to take the course, she said to me, oh, you were a middle child. You're going to be very good at this. I think middle children just learn to sort of try to keep the peace. And it works.
Now, was that hard in your family or no?
Hard in my family.
To keep the peace.
Yeah, there was there were always fights and yelling and screaming, and there was a lot of fights, but they were okay. My mother was divorced. My mother was married 3 times. In those years, for somebody to be divorced and married 3 times was like, wow. It just was hard to.
So you saw your mother become divorced and remarried 3 times. Did that affect you in any way?
Yes, it probably didn't want me to get married. I took a long time, and in those years I got married like I was 24. And if you ask Grandpa, he'll tell you that I kept saying no. I don't want to be serious. I don't want to be serious. And I think that was probably one of the reasons that I didn't want to be serious.
And would you say so? But all the men that your mother married, did you get along with all of them, or?
Yes, I did. I got along with all of them. I would say with my father, I used to be very embarrassed because he'd come to the school to look for me, to see me, and he was always crying. So that was very difficult. I'd make believe, it was mean of me probably, but I would make believe I didn't know him until I left the school yard, and he'd be waiting for me. And then my sister Jewel, who's older, she would say, I have to go upstairs and see what Mom wants, and then I would be left with him alone, and I said, how am I going to get out of here? I'd say, I have to go upstairs, I have to go and see what she wants. But that was hard, and I realized that it was sad. Tommy, that's my younger sister's father. I realized very young that a stepfather is really a stepfather. It's not like your real father. You can't say to him, I want to go to college, I want a new dress. You just really can't because it's not your father, and he doesn't have to give you anything. It took me a long time to make my sister Lynn understand that. But he was good to me. He was very good to me.
Okay.
And the third one, Charlie was really funny because the first time I met Charlie was over the telephone. I called my mother to see how she was doing, and he picked up the telephone, and I said, hello, is my mother there? He said, who is this? And he says, is this, how did he used some bad language. And I said, "Oh, I must have the wrong number," and I hung up. So when I called back, he used to consider me a princess because he used some four-letter words that I didn't think were very nice. But we got used to him, and that was Charlie. He worked on the docks and the Brooklyn docks, and he could be a little bit with language.
Okay, so is there anything else?
Trying to think. I was determined to go to college. I was very insistent.
Were you upset when you didn't go to college?
I think so. I think I wanted to go very badly. I got married, and when I got married, I found out that my husband's a retired dentist. Your grandfather's a retired dentist. So he used to tell all his assistants that they should become hygienists. So I said, you know what? I'm going to become a hygienist. So I went to a 2-year college. I had found out they were going to start a dental program in about 2 years, and I knew I had to get some credits taken first. So I went there, and the fellow interviewing me was very funny because he said, "Well, you better hurry up. You've been about look how long you've been out of high school." And I said, "But I'm not that old. I was like 37." Anyway, I did. They only took 20 students, and there were 160 that applied, and I was one of the 20. And we were the first class, and we were the first class that graduated all 20. Since then, they have not graduated a whole class of 20.
Wow.
So I think that first class they were very, very tough with and strict with, and we really did well. And I worked as a hygienist for 24 years. And then when I retired, I worked in Judith Lieber pocketbook store for 7 years, and now I do divorce mediation and small claims in the court as a volunteer mediation. So I keep very busy, and I really accomplished a lot. Have 2 wonderful daughters and 3 wonderful grandchildren, and what more can anyone ask for?
So you'd say in the long run, though, how did not going to college change your life for the worse or for the better?
Many times I do think of